Word opens to me, the more I understand I really don't know anything. I normally read the Bible, it's like we are so amazed how wonderful the Word is, but it's like really just beholding the tip of the iceberg. And it's beautiful. Don't misunderstand me, it really is beautiful. But when you start to dive down in the depths and you realize the completeness and the wholeness and the perfection of what God has planned for us, and it's like literally seeing a treasure chest or opening it and really understanding what you're working with. And I think it is time that we understand the Word of God in its fullness. My greatest discovery in the Word was when I found Hebrews 1:1. And I mean, so I have been through that so many times. But when it opened up to me, so there is a place where it has to open up to you. When I saw that he says, in times past, in separate revelations, he has spoken to the fathers. Now the fathers started with Abraham. And times past, and times, generations, and ages, he has spoken to the fathers, separate revelations. But now he speaks through the Son. So times past must be totally different to what is happening now. And this is very important because in the fullness of time, Jesus Christ came in the fullness of time, right in the middle, right on time. God knew exactly what he was doing. And if you take John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. This is actually the first chronological verse in the Bible, because Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created. But he says, in the beginning was the Word. We don't understand what the beginning is. The beginning is where the Word was being formed. And if we read it in Proverbs and Psalms, it writes about that Jesus Christ was in the before time. So we don't even understand anything about that. Genesis 1, time was only created on day 4. And in the Spirit, the Bible goes like this. You read it like this. It has so many dimensions. It has more dimensions than a diamond. It is above. It is beneath. It is here, because the Bible speaks about the earth, under the earth, above the earth. He says you must be born from above. He said, I'm not from beneath. And when he talks about that, he was standing on the earth. And he's speaking from the above. He said, no one has seen the Father except him that comes from the bosom of the Father. So he's also called the first begotten. Now, we know that Adam was also God's son. We must always understand these two lines in the Word, above, beneath, the two sons. And it's always the oldest will always serve the younger. This is like a principle laid down in the Word that nobody can change. It is like it. Now you can say, oh, Annalise, are you saying all the older sons have to serve the younger? No. I just want to say something here. Realms. The Spirit is realms. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we try and change history in the Bible. You can't. History is history. It's done. It's over. After my husband died, I had this funny thing that I had to protect his legacy, and I realized very soon that a legacy is, you can't add anything to it. What is said is said, what is done. That's it. That's the package. You can just treasure it. And one thing is that life just goes on. And the other one is life just goes on. The one is bad and the one is good. Life goes on because we are progressing towards God's purposes. It depends what you do. So if you do not understand God's purposes, you are just going to go around in circles and you're not going to get it. But if you start understanding God's purposes, that he works in time. Now, this is what the Bible really is. The Bible is history. You can't change it. You can't put our history there. You can't put that history here. You can't mess history up. History is history. But it's literally a book of history that we can apply in the spirit. You know what? When I have to stand before a king, I know what Esther did. When Goliath is in front of me, I know what David did. When the Philistines are running around, I know what Samson did. Come on, guys. And these things are all spiritual. Gideon, the only guy, all the others are hiding. Gideon, the only one protecting the wheat, and he even did it in the wine press. There are so much depth into that. But we have to understand that the whole book is there so we can make it. Not that we can change it, not that we can make our own doctrines. We have to delve into it and apply this history written down by the Spirit into our lives. So it is actually, unless you take the Bible as a life application, you have not read it. You have not understood it. Because he says, now he speaks through the Son in Hebrews 1. But Hebrews 10 says, in the volume of the book, it's written, I've come to do your will. I've come to remove the old, verse 9. And that is where we find revelation. That's the removal of the old. And that's not for the victorious church. And there are so many things we need to understand in time. Jesus Christ, Son of Man, returned to this earth on the cloud of heaven. And Revelation 1 describes this coming back. He says it's a coming back as a Son of Man. And all that pierced him will see him. Now, please, Revelation is it is a spirit book. So see is also, you can interpret it with feeling the brunt of it. They are going through it. And this is why people are so scared of Revelation, because they think all this still has to come. No, it has been. Someone asked me once and said, Annalise, are you pre-trip, mid-trip, or post-trip? And I said, no, I'm spirit kingdom. Because when God writes his letters to the church, he says, anybody that will hear what the Spirit says will be an overcomer. So we are not hearing what the Spirit says. We are listening to what everybody else says. I know you're listening to me now. You cannot take anything I say unless you go back into the Word and get it for yourself. Because I am a human being. I sometimes misquote my scriptures. I sometimes missay my words. I make mistakes, and I'm still not in total perfection, because here I am. I'm still on earth. We have to be transformed by our minds until our body, soul, and spirit is saved. And I'm not there, because 1 Peter 1:9 says, the end of your faith is the salvation of your soul. Paul says, I've run my race, I kept my faith. So now what we have today is everybody is running for miracles and signs and wonders. Is it wrong? No, go for it. But how much more your faith? Because I am tired of seeing people being used of God, and then they fall out and they leave everything. I never thought in my life I would ever see this. So at the end, your character is more important than anything you do for God. And the only thing you can actually do for God, by the way, is obedience, because that is what Adam had in the beginning. So what I'm trying to do today is I want to bring you a general thing of, hey guys, we need to understand the Bible more. We need to get into the Word. Time is very important, because in Isaiah 46:11, he says, the end is determined from the beginning. Wow, I've looked at Miles Monroe the other day, and I've never heard anybody really say it so well. It's like God finished the product, then he stood back, and only then he started creating. So that is what predestined is. He didn't build a tower that he didn't count at the cost. So now, if he says the end is determined from the beginning, and Revelation says, I'm the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. God doesn't have a beginning and end. He is the beginning and the end. So the beginning and the end has to do with time, because in the Spirit, there is no beginning and the end. For in the Spirit, the end is but a new beginning. So time is a concept that we live in that has a beginning and it has an end. But the end is just the new beginning. I love what the message says. The resurrection of Christ is the end of death as the end. So what we have in the Bible is the story of how man fell short of glory. And the earth was cursed, and man was cursed because he said, from dust you are, to dust you go back. But when Jesus came, what did he do just before he died? He washed the dust from their feet. Oh, so before Christ, he says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Matthew 22:32. In Romans, he says, I'm the God of the living and the dead. Paul, it looks like he's the only guy that got that revelation. He says, whether I live or die, I belong to God. You cannot kill me. He says, by life or by death, God will be glorified in my body. What? So in Christ you sleep. And when Jesus came, he preached the kingdom. They didn't receive it. And then he turned and he started preaching the resurrection and the life. So the kingdom can only come by resurrection and life. And what is that? He was the seed planted. So he brought us back to the garden. And this is what this series is going to be about. The garden of God. Jesus Christ in the beginning. Oh, I love this. In Genesis 2, he says, God planted a garden eastward and Eden. Eastward is not a direction. Genesis is also a spirit book. So eastward means firstly. This is what God did first. Now the end is determined from the beginning. So we have to understand that what is God going to have at the end? A garden. What did man mess up? The garden. Come on. So what is God going to bring us back? To the garden. Now he says garden in that sense. If you go look at the words, it means bride or enclosure. And this is what God has for us. And you will see all through the Bible. God always wanted a garden. When he chose Israel, he says in Isaiah 5:4, he says, I have planted a vineyard on a very fruitful hill, and I fenced it around. Come on, we read all these parables about the vineyard that is fenced around. It means bride. This is why the Song of Solomon says, oh, my bride, my loved one. He sings this love song that God has for us. Come on. And what do we read? At the last verses in the Bible, the Spirit and the bride says, come. When we finally realize who we are, we're going to step into the fullness that God has planned for us from the beginning. But we really have to understand this garden thing. So welcome to my series on the garden.